When my husband said, "I'm moving back in with my ex-wife to take care of her, you'll understand someday," I smiled and said, "Of course." I even packed his bags and drove him to her house. What I discreetly slipped into her mailbox brought him back home empty-handed in less than 48 hours. "I'm moving back in with Olivia to care for her during her recovery. You'll understand someday." Ethan dropped these words while I was sipping my Tuesday night chamomile tea, forcing me to set the mug down on the table with deliberate control instead of throwing it at his head. 5 years of marriage, and he chose to detonate our life together with the casual tone of a man announcing a change in grocery store. I studied his face, the way he constantly adjusted his reading glasses, the nervous twisting of his wedding ring, the careful distance he maintained from me across our kitchen island. "Of course," I heard myself say in a voice so sweet it made him take a step back. "When do you have to leave?" His relief was instantaneous and insulting. He'd been expecting tears, accusations, perhaps even the ceramic mug flying past his ear. Instead, my tranquil acceptance completely unnerved him. "Tomorrow afternoon," he managed, his fingers still fiddling with that ring. "Her surgery is Thursday at 7 o'clock a.m. I nodded, taking another sip of chamomile. Suddenly, the kitchen felt smaller, the walls pressing in on me despite the open-plan design we fell in love with when we bought the house 3 years ago. Back then, in this very spot, Ethan had wrapped his arms around me, whispering about the children we'd raise here, the dinners we'd host, the life we'd build together. Now he stood on the other side of the granite counter, like it was a fortress wall. "How long has Olivia been planning this surgery?" I asked, keeping my tone conversational. "About 2 months. Is complicated. Something about nerve damage from her car accident last year." He was more comfortable now, probably grateful I was engaging instead of exploding. "She's tried to manage with physical therapy, but the doctors finally said surgery was the only option." 2 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip to Napa Valley, he had been planning his exodus. The reservation confirmations were still in my email, the winery tour already paid for, scheduled for 3 weeks from now. I wondered if he'd forgotten or simply hadn't cared enough to remember. "And she doesn't have anyone else?" I asked, genuinely curious about this part of his narrative. Olivia Matthews was hardly a hermit. Her Facebook profile, which I definitely hadn't been stalking, showed regular girls' nights out, family barbecues, and a particularly close relationship with her sister. Her parents moved to Florida last year, and, she and her sister aren't speaking. There was the lie, slipping out as smooth as butter. Just last week, Olivia had posted photos from her sister's birthday dinner. "I'm the only one she's comfortable asking for help. She needs intimate care." Intimate care. The phrase hung in the air between us like a confession. I could see him realizing what he'd said, the blush creeping up his neck as he scrambled to clarify. "Medical care, I mean. Helping her shower, changing bandages, that sort of thing." "How fortunate that you're available to help," I said, getting up to rinse my mug in the sink. Through the window, I saw our neighbor, Mrs. Davis, walking her elderly poodle, Muffin, adhering to her strict 7:30 schedule. The normalcy of the scene felt surreal. "Will you be staying in the guest room?" Ethan's silence lasted a beat too long. "She's converted her downstairs office into a recovery room so she won't have to navigate the stairs." How thoughtful of her, planning so far ahead. I turned off the faucet, drying my hands on the dish towel with deliberate care. 2 months, you said?" He must have heard something in my tone because his shoulders tensed. "Isabella, I'm not leaving you. This is temporary, just until she recovers." "Of course it is." I folded the towel and hung it perfectly straight on the oven handle. "And how long do the doctors expect her recovery to take?" 6 weeks, maybe 8, depending on complications. 8 weeks of my husband living with his ex-wife, providing intimate care, being her hero. I turned to face him, leaning against the counter. "You really have thought this all through." "I had to. I knew this would be hard for you to understand. But Isabella, she was my wife for 8 years. We didn't work out, but I can't abandon her when she needs help." There was that word again, abandon. As if not moving in with your ex-wife constituted abandonment. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. as if staying with your actual wife was somehow the morally inferior choice. You're right, I said, and his eyes widened in surprise. I do understand. You made a commitment, and you have to follow through. Ethan's relief was almost comical. In fact, he smiled, that boyish grin that had captivated me at a coffee shop 6 years ago. I knew you'd come around. You're incredible, Isabella. Not many wives would be this understanding. I smiled back, already mentally cataloging the contents of his office. The passwords he kept on post-its despite my security warnings. The filing cabinet where he thought I didn't know he kept old pictures of Olivia. Well, then we should get your bags packed. You'll want to arrive organized. You don't have to help, he said quickly. I know this is weird. Nonsense, what kind of wife would I be if I didn't help my husband when he needs it? I walked past him toward the hallway. I'll grab your suitcase from the closet. You should probably call Olivia and let her know when to expect you. As I walked up the stairs to our bedroom, I heard him behind me, his voice already adopting those soft, intimate tones. Hey, Ollie. Yeah, I just talked to her. She's being amazing. Amazing. That was one way to describe how I was performing. Entering our bedroom, I pulled his large suitcase from the closet, the one we bought for our honeymoon to Hawaii. Inside, the baggage tag from that trip was still there. Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Miller, it read. Forever starts today. Forever had lasted exactly 5 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The suitcase lay open on our bed like a mouth, waiting to swallow the last 5 years of my life. I heard the shower turn on in the master bathroom. Ethan's off-key humming of some old song drifted through the door. He always hummed when he felt guilty, a tell he never knew he had. I folded another shirt with crisp square corners, just as my mother taught me, and placed it in the bag next to the others. His laptop was open on his nightstand, the screen dark but unlocked. Ethan never remembered to lock it, despite my constant reminders about digital security. The shower continued to run hard. He took long showers, especially when he needed to think, which meant I had at least 10 minutes. I walked around the bed and touched the trackpad. The screen sprang to life, revealing his email inbox. At the top, a conversation thread with Olivia Matthews stretching back 2 months. 2 months of planning this moment, while I slept next to him every night, oblivious. The subject line read, post-op prep, innocent enough for a casual glance over the shoulder. I clicked it open. Olivia's last message, sent yesterday at 11:43 p.m. while I was asleep after yoga, turned my stomach. Can't wait to have you back here, Gabs. I feel like we finally have our second chance. Once you've moved in, we can see where this really goes. Ethan's reply sent at 11:51 p.m. from the bathroom while I was sleeping in the next room. Isabella won't object if we play it right. She's too polite to look unsupportive of someone being sick. Trust me on this, too polite. After 5 years of marriage, that's how he saw me. Not kind, not understanding, not loving, polite. As if I were a stranger who'd hold the door rather than let it slam in someone's face. I scrolled back further. March 15th. Olivia wrote, the doctor says I can schedule the surgery anytime after May. Let's wait until after your anniversary. Ethan's reply. No, the sooner the better. Yeah. Isabella always gets sentimental around our anniversary. Better to do it when she's distracted with work. They had scheduled the breakup of my heart around my busy season at the marketing agency like a dentist appointment wedged between meetings. I heard the water pressure change in the shower, a sign Ethan was nearly done. I closed the email, making sure to mark it unread, and went back to folding clothes. When Ethan emerged with the towel around his waist, hair dripping, he found me organizing his medication bottles into a travel dop kit. You don't have to do this, he said, but his voice was relieved, not protesting. Scrambled eggs or an omelet, I asked, not looking up from the pills I was sorting. For breakfast, I mean, you'll need a good meal before your job. Mallet, Ethan said, sitting on the edge of the bed, water drops from his hair, hitting the duvet. Spicy kick, just the way you like it. I zipped the dop kit closed. I'll start cooking while you get dressed. In the kitchen, I moved with expert efficiency. Eggs whipped with a splash of cream, just how Ethan liked them. Sourdough bread in the toaster, butter softening on the counter, coffee brewing strong and black. Every motion was automatic, leaving my mind free to process what I had read. 2 months, 8 weeks of careful planning, of synchronized deception. I thought of all the late nights I'd worked, the weekend conferences that now seemed suspiciously frequent, the way he'd been more attentive lately, guilt disguised as affection. The doorbell rang as I plated the eggs. Through the kitchen window, I saw Maria's Honda in the driveway. My best friend since college had the disaster sensing instinct of animals before an earthquake. "Just wanted to drop off this book," Maria announced when I opened the door, though we both knew no book had ever been mentioned. Her eyes caught my strained smile, the sounds of Ethan moving upstairs, the visible suitcase through the bedroom door. "Isabella, what is going on?" "Ethan is going to help Olivia with her surgery recovery," I said, my voice as bright as the morning sun. "Isn't that wonderful of him?" Maria's face cycled through several expressions before settling on disbelief. She worked as a surgical nurse at the same hospital where Olivia was scheduled. "Breast augmentation." The words dropped into my kitchen like hand grenades, but I kept whipping the eggs. "He said it was nerve damage from a car accident." "Isabella," Maria lowered her voice. "I saw the OR schedule. It's elective cosmetic surgery. She's been planning it for months." "How thoughtful of her to schedule everything so carefully," I said, adding salt to the eggs with a steady hand. Maria stared at me. We'd known each other for 12 years through bad boyfriends and worse decisions, through her divorce and my father's death. She knew my faces, all of them, including this one, the calm before I burned everything down. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked softly. "No need. Ethan needs a good breakfast before his mission of mercy." I poured the eggs into the hot pan, the sizzle filling the silence. After Maria left, squeezing my hand tightly and whispering, "Call me," I served Ethan breakfast. He ate quickly, nervously, complimenting the eggs twice as if that would assuage his guilt. I sipped my coffee and made all the appropriate nodding sounds, as he once again explained how temporary this arrangement would be. "I should check the joint account," he said suddenly, pulling out his phone, "just to make sure there's enough for groceries while I'm gone." I watched him navigate our banking app. I watched his face remain carefully neutral as he looked at the balance. He didn't mention the $30,000 that had disappeared over the last 2 years. The monthly transfers to an insurance company I'd never heard of, the large withdrawal labeled Property Consult from only 6 weeks ago. He simply closed the app and kept eating. "I'll take care of the bills while you're away," I offered, refilling his coffee mug. "You're incredible," he said again. That word that was starting to sound more like an accusation than a compliment. "I don't deserve you." "Finally, something we can agree on." I smiled and began clearing the plates, every movement deliberate and calm. Inside, though, the pieces of my world were rearranging themselves into a pattern I was only beginning to comprehend. The missing money, the secret planning, the surgery that wasn't what it seemed, threads of deception weaving into something larger than a mere affair. "We should finish packing," I said, drying my hands on the dish towel. "Olivia will be waiting." Upstairs, Ethan had retreated to his office to make calls, his voice a low murmur through the closed door. I was in our bedroom surveying the suitcase chaos ahead. His clothes hung in the closet like witnesses to our crumbling marriage, each shirt and tie holding memories I needed to detach from. I pulled out his summer wear first, the linen pants he'd worn on our Charleston trip last month, the polo shirts for golf outings with clients, each piece folded with the precision of someone who had worked at a department store in college, creases sharp enough to cut. Ethan came out of his office an hour later and found me surrounded by perfectly organized piles, his dress shirt sorted by color gradient, casual clothes by function, each stack looking like a department store display. "You're really going all out," he said, and I heard the discomfort creep into his voice. "If you're going to take care of someone, you have to be organized," I countered, holding up a label maker I'd found in the closet. "I'm labeling everything so you can find what you need quickly. Morning wear, casual evening, pajamas, each label printed with unnecessary precision, the kind of detail that suggested either obsessive care or barely contained rage." "Isabella, this is..." He stopped, watching me fold his underwear into perfect squares. "You really don't need to do all this." "I started on the meals, too," I continued as if he hadn't spoken. "I'm making 2 weeks' worth of freezer meals." Olivia shouldn't have to cook while she's recovering, and you've never been much good in the kitchen. The jab slid out smoothly, wrapped in concern. I've made chicken soup, that lasagna you love, and I'm working on a special healing tea blend with ginger and turmeric. Ethan's face cycled through expressions before settling on something close to fear. A recovery tea for Olivia? Anti-inflammatory properties. I smiled brightly. I'll put it in a nice jar with instructions. She'll appreciate the gesture. He retreated back into his office, and I heard his phone, voice low but urgent. She's not being helpful. Too helpful. It's weird. Pause. I don't know what to think. While he was distracted, I slipped into his office. The filing cabinet in the corner had always been locked, Ethan's private space for what he called important documents. What he didn't know was that I had made a copy of the key years ago after he lost the original and asked me to order a replacement. 2 keys arrived. I gave him one. The bottom drawer slid open silently, behind 3-year-old tax returns, behind old warranties and instruction manuals. My fingers found a folder that felt different, newer. The papers inside were crisp, recently handled. I pulled it out carefully, listening for Ethan's footsteps. The first document took my breath away for a moment. A life insurance policy in the name of Olivia Matthews, dated 2 years ago, valued at $500,000. Ethan was listed as the sole beneficiary. The premium payments, I noted with cold clarity, matched those mysterious charges from the insurance company on our joint account. He had been paying for this with our money, planning something I couldn't quite fully grasp yet. But the second document made everything crystal clear. A quitclaim deed signed 6 weeks ago transferring partial ownership of Olivia's townhouse to Ethan, the very townhouse he was moving into today. The document cited in consideration for future care and support as the reason for the transfer. 6 weeks ago, we'd been celebrating our anniversary at that expensive French restaurant downtown, Ethan holding my hand across the table, talking about our future. My phone camera captured everything, every page, every signature, every date, the insurance policy payment history, the notary stamp on the deed, the witness's signature that looked suspiciously like Ryan's, Ethan's colleague, 23 photos in all, each one evidence of a betrayal that went far beyond a mere affair. I heard Ethan's footsteps in the hall and quickly returned everything exactly as I'd found it. The folder went back behind the tax returns, the drawer locked with a click, and I was examining his bookshelf when he opened the door. Looking for something? His voice held a nuance of suspicion. That medical reference book you bought last year, I said, running my finger across the spines. Thought it might be helpful in understanding Olivia's recovery needs. He visibly relaxed. It's in the garage, I think, but really, the doctor will give us all the information. Of course. I walked past him toward the door. I should check on the soup. Downstairs, I ladled the fresh chicken soup into containers, each one labeled with heating instructions in my best handwriting. My phone vibrated, my mother calling with her usual impeccable timing. I answered with forced cheer. Hi, Mom. Isabella, something's wrong. I can feel it. 30 years of maternal instinct condensed into one call. Everything's fine. In fact, Ethan's doing something really noble. I let admiration seep into my voice. His ex-wife, Olivia, needs help after surgery, and he's offered to be her caregiver. Isn't that wonderful? The silence on the other end stretched for 3 seconds. He what? He's temporarily moving in to help her with her recovery. It's what any decent person would do. I knew my mother would be on the phone with her book club within minutes. The news would spread through our social circle like wildfire. Ethan's noble gesture would be debated over wine and judgment before he even reached Olivia's house. Isabella, my mother's voice dropped to her serious tone, the one she used when catching me sneaking out of the house in high school. What are you playing at? I'm supporting my husband's decision to help someone in need, I countered, adding another soup container to the growing collection. Wouldn't you do the same for Dad? She made a sound that could have meant anything. Call me if you need me. I will. Mom, give Dad a kiss for me. I hung up and returned to the meal prep. Lasagna assembled with layers as precise as my folded clothes. Vegetable curry portioned into individual servings. Everything Ethan would need for 2 weeks of domestic comfort while playing house with another woman. The tea blend was the last thing. chamomile for calm, ginger for inflammation, powdered honey for sweetness, and just a hint of lavender for sleep. Nothing harmful, nothing that could hurt anyone, just a gentle remedy packaged in a glass jar with a hand-painted label for healing and new beginnings. Ethan found me organizing it all into a cooler with freezer packs. "This is too much," he said, but his protest sounded hollow. "It's exactly enough," I corrected, closing the cooler with a decisive snap. "All set for tomorrow." Wednesday morning dawned with a mocking sun streaming through our bedroom windows. Ethan was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed in his freshly pressed khakis and the blue button-down shirt I had ironed last night, the same shirt he had worn to his first dinner with my parents 4 years ago. Now he was wearing it to move in with another woman. "Coffee?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Ethan needed his morning coffee like other people needed oxygen. 2 sugars, a splash of milk, served in the Yankees mug his brother had given him. In the kitchen, I performed the coffee ritual with mechanical precision while Ethan loaded his bags by the front door. The cooler of prepared meals was ready on the counter. The glass jar of healing tea rested on top like the crown jewel of martyrdom. I heard him grunt slightly as he lifted his suitcase, the one filled with clothes I'd folded as if preparing a soldier for war. "My car's still in the shop," Ethan announced when I handed him his coffee, though we both knew I had seen it parked at his office yesterday when I drove past. "Would you mind giving me a ride?" The lie floated between us, obvious and insulting. But I smiled. "Of course, we should probably take the cooler too. It's all packed." During the 20-minute drive to Olivia's townhouse, Ethan transformed with every mile we put between us and our house. His shoulders relaxed, his breathing deepened, his fingers stopped drumming nervously on his knee. By the time we hit the freeway, he was even humming again, that same guilty tune from yesterday's shower. "This is so modern of us," he said as we passed the downtown exit. "Most people wouldn't understand this kind of arrangement." "We're not like most people," I countered, keeping my eyes on the road as I memorized every detail of his relief. The way he kept checking his phone, probably messages from Olivia, the slight smile playing at the corners of his lips, the wedding ring he had switched to his right hand at some point this morning, thinking I wouldn't notice. Olivia's development appeared like a mirage of mediocrity, endless rows of beige and gray facades with tiny plots of regulated lawn. Her house was at the end of Rosewood Lane, a name that suggested an elegance the neighborhood couldn't deliver. I pulled into her driveway behind a BMW that definitely hadn't been there during the supposed financial hardship she'd complained about on Facebook last year. Before Ethan could even unbuckle his seatbelt, the front door opened. Olivia stood in the doorway as if she'd been waiting at the window, watching for our arrival. She wore champagne-colored silk pajamas, her blonde hair perfectly waved, her face fully made up with the kind of careful application that takes at least an hour. For someone recovering from surgery, she looked remarkably put together, like someone headed to brunch at an upscale restaurant. "Ethan," her voice reached the small front lawn with a rehearsed weakness. I was starting to worry. She moved toward us with careful steps, one hand pressed to her side in a gesture of pain that didn't quite match the fluidity of her walk. Ethan practically vaulted out of the car to meet her, his hands hovering near her elbows as if she might collapse at any moment. "Easy," he murmured, and I saw Olivia lean into him with calculated fragility. "Isabella." Olivia finally addressed me, her green eyes raking over me with the kind of appraisal women reserve for their rivals. "You're an angel for understanding. Not many wives would be so evolved." I pulled the cooler from the back seat, my movements deliberately cheerful. "We all do what we must. Ethan tells me your recovery might be challenging." "Oh, it's been dreadful," Olivia sighed. Though her breath showed no sign of post-operative difficulty, the pain is excruciating sometimes. I can barely manage on my own. As we walked inside, I cataloged everything. The wheelchair prominently positioned in the living room, but showing no signs of use. Its price tag hastily removed, but leaving adhesive residue. Medication bottles arranged on the coffee table like props. Labels facing out for maximum visibility, fresh flowers in every room, the kind of expensive arrangements that suggested visitors were expected. The surgery recovery setup was as staged as a furniture store display. Let me help you with your bags, I offered, following Ethan back out to the car while Olivia posed decoratively on the couch. She seems to be managing well for someone newly post-op, I comment softly, lifting his laptop bag. Ethan's jaw tightened. Recovery affects everyone differently. Inside, Olivia had moved to the kitchen, her hand finding Ethan's arm with the expert ease of long-running intimacy. I've missed having someone here, she said, her fingers tracing his sleeve. The nights are the hardest. Well, now you have help, I said cheerfully, setting the cooler on her granite counter. I've made 2 weeks of meals, and this, I held up the glass jar, is a special healing blend tea. Ginger, turmeric, chamomile, very soothing. Olivia's smile stretched at the edges. How thoughtful. I should go, I announced after helping arrange Ethan's things in what Olivia called the guest room, but which had clearly been recently redecorated with new linens and fresh paint. Ethan walked me to the door. His relief at my departure was palpable. I'll call you later, he said, the lie comfortable on his lips. Take all the time you need, I countered, loud enough for Olivia to hear. I drove 2 blocks to a small coffee shop I'd spotted on the way. The afternoon crowd hadn't arrived yet, giving me privacy in a corner with my laptop and the folder I'd stashed in my purse. Every photograph from yesterday was transferred to a new, backed-up email account on a cloud service. Evidence preserved in triplicate. Next, I pulled out the manila envelope I had bought that morning. Inside, I tucked printed copies of everything. The life insurance policy with the payment records highlighted, the property deed with a post-it note that read, interesting timing choice, property transfer 6 weeks before elective surgery. Screenshots of their planning emails with Ethan's cruel assessment of my politeness highlighted in yellow, but the masterpiece was Olivia's own Instagram. 3 days before her supposed emergency surgery, she had posted photos from a wine tasting in Napa Valley. Her radiant smile and the glass of Cabernet in her hand didn't suggest someone preparing for urgent medical intervention. I printed those too, adding another note. Remarkable recovery from that wine tasting. The final piece of my package was the handwritten note on cream-colored stationery I'd bought specifically for this moment. My handwriting, deliberately altered to be unrecognizable, spelled out Olivia's future with surgical precision. Olivia, and you should know that, Ethan, took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on you 2 years ago, paid for with community property. Combined with the property transfer, this creates an interesting financial picture. Perhaps you should ask yourself why a healthy woman needs a caregiver who benefits from her death. Consult your attorney about property transfers made under medical duress. Duress voids contracts. Best wishes for your recovery. A concerned observer. I sealed the envelope, wrote Olivia's name on the front, and walked out of the coffee shop. The walk back to her neighborhood took me 15 minutes, enough time for the afternoon to fade into dusk. Dog walkers and joggers provided the perfect cover as I strode past manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. Olivia's was at the end of her black metal driveway with a red flag waiting to announce incoming mail. I slid the envelope inside, feeling the satisfying weight as it settled among her regular correspondence. Then I kept walking as if I belonged there. Just another resident enjoying the evening air. The drive home felt like floating. Every traffic light seemed to understand my mood, turning green at my approach. Back in my empty house, the silence greeted me like an old friend. No murmur of Ethan's study TV, no sound of his tapping keyboard, no throat clearing when he wanted attention but wouldn't ask directly, just blessed stillness. I poured myself a glass of Cabernet from the bottle Ethan had been saving for a special occasion and stood in my kitchen surveying the space he had always criticized. Too cluttered, he'd say, too many gadgets we never use. But tonight, I saw it differently. Every appliance had its place. Every spice jar faced forward, the counters clear and clean. This was my space, organized exactly how I wanted it. The wine tasted better than it ever had when I shared it with Ethan. I reorganized the pantry as I sipped, moving his protein bars to the top shelf, putting my herbal teas front and center. His breakfast cereal went to the very back. My granola took the prime position, small acts of reclamation that felt like a revolution. My phone lay on the counter, face up with the volume on high. Olivia always checked her mail first thing in the morning. She'd posted about it once, calling it her pre-coffee ritual. 7:30 a.m., like clockwork, according to the timestamps on her posts complaining about bills and political junk mail. In approximately 13 hours, she would find my envelope. The thought made me smile into my wine glass. That night, I slept in the center of our king-sized bed, sprawling out like a starfish, reclaiming every inch of space Ethan had occupied. No snoring from his side, no restless turning, no alarm set for his absurdly early workout routine that he'd maintained for exactly 3 weeks before giving up. The sheet smelled only of my laundry softener, his cologne already fading like a ghost, leaving its haunting. Thursday morning arrived with birdsong outside my window. 6:30 a.m. I stretched luxuriantly, taking my time with morning yoga in the living room, where Ethan always complained my mat was in the way. Warrior pose felt particularly fitting as I held it, breathing deeply, centering myself for whatever came next. Breakfast was simple: Greek yogurt with honey and walnuts, green tea, and my favorite mug, the delicate one with painted roses that Ethan said looked like something out of a grandma's inheritance. I checked work emails, responded to a client about a marketing proposal, scheduled a meeting for next week. Normal activities that felt surreal given what was brewing 2 miles away in Olivia's mailbox. 7:30 a.m. came and went. My phone remained silent. 7:45, 8. Either Olivia had overslept, breaking her routine, or she was processing what she had found. I pictured her standing in her entryway, the envelope in her hand, reading and rereading the note, the growing realization that Ethan might not be the savior she had orchestrated. At 8:17, my phone vibrated. It wasn't Ethan, but my sister Laura. Her timing, uncanny as always. "You are not going to believe what I just heard," she said without preamble. Laura lived for gossip like other people lived for oxygen. "Good morning to you too," I countered, refilling my tea. "Olivia Matthews has been bragging to the book club for weeks that she was going to get Ethan back," Laura continued, her voice tinged with the thrill of breaking news. "Sophia, remember Sophia, Olivia's sister? She's been telling everyone how Olivia planned the whole thing, the surgery, the timing, everything." I set the mug down carefully. "Sophia is in your book club? She started last month. She was dying to vent about Olivia. Apparently, Olivia researched when your busy season was at work. She planned the surgery for maximum impact. She even practiced her helpless act in front of the mirror." The confirmation of what I had suspected should have hurt, but instead it felt like validation. Every instinct I'd had was correct. "That's quite elaborate," I said softly. "Isabella, she's been planning this for over a year." Sophia said Olivia hired a private investigator to follow Ethan's routines. "She found out about your marital issues." "We didn't have marital issues," I interrupted. Laura paused. No, you didn't until yesterday." The silence stretched between us before Laura spoke again. Her voice was softer. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish my tea and work on the Henderson account," I countered. "By the way, I have a video consultation with my attorney in 20 minutes. "Your attorney? Isabella, you haven't wasted any time." "Why would I? Ethan made his decision. I'm simply responding accordingly." After Laura hung up, I prepared for my video consult with Carla Bell, the attorney Maria had recommended last year during her own divorce. Carla's face appeared on my laptop screen at exactly 9 a.m., her expression professional yet warm. "Isabella, I've reviewed the documents you sent. It's quite a comprehensive collection." I had emailed her everything the night before: the insurance policy, the property deed, the bank statements showing the missing $30,000, the screenshots of the planning emails between Ethan and Olivia. "Your husband's actions constitute marital fraud," Carla continued, her fingers steepled as she spoke. "Using joint funds for the insurance policy, the property consultation, hiding assets. This all gives you a significant advantage. The property transfer alone raises questions of undue influence and financial manipulation." "What does that mean in practice?" I asked, taking notes on a notepad. "It means Ethan has violated his fiduciary duty to you as his spouse. The court looks very dimly on spouses who dissipate marital assets, especially when deception is involved. You are entitled to a full accounting and likely a greater portion of the remaining assets as compensation. And if he tries to claim this is temporary, that he's coming back? Carla's smile was as sharp as a scalpel. Abandonment is abandonment, regardless of his state intentions. Carla was outlining the details of property division when my phone rang at exactly 11:47 a.m. Ethan's name on the screen made my pulse quicken, though I kept my expression neutral for the video call. I need to take this, I told Carla. It's him. Document everything, she advised before I switched the call. Ethan's voice came through loud and strained, nothing like the self-assured man who had left my house yesterday morning. Isabella, I need you to come get me. You can't. I got kicked out. Olivia has lost it. She won't let me back in. My bags are on the lawn. She's threatening to call the police. His words tumbled out. Panic made him sound decades younger than his 35 years. She found some documents. She thinks I'm trying to... It's crazy. She thinks I'm after her money. The satisfaction that blossomed in my chest was dark and complete, though my voice remained steady. The police, Ethan, what kind of documents would make her think that? I don't know. The edge of hysteria in his voice was new. In 5 years of marriage, I had never heard him so unhinged. Something about insurance and property. She's completely paranoid. The pain medication must be messing with her judgment. I grabbed my car keys, already moving toward the door. I'm on my way. Try to keep calm. Please hurry. The neighbors are watching. The drive to Olivia's townhouse took 18 minutes, though I could have made it in 12 then. Every red light gave me time to compose my face into the appropriate expression of concern mixed with confusion. By the time I turned onto Rosewood Lane, I had achieved the perfect balance of understanding wife rushing to her troubled husband's rescue. The scene that greeted me was better than anything I could have imagined. Ethan sat atop his suitcases at the end of Olivia's driveway, his shoulders slumped, looking exactly like unclaimed lost luggage. His perfectly ironed shirt from yesterday was wrinkled, his hair a mess as if he'd repeatedly run his hands through it. Two neighbors were on their driveways, pretending to check the mail while obviously relishing the drama. Through Olivia's front window, I could see her pacing with the phone glued to her ear, gesticulating wildly with her free hand. Even from the car, her agitation was visible in every move. Yesterday's silk pajamas had been replaced by street clothes, the invalid act apparently forgotten in her fury. I parked and approached Ethan with measured steps, aware of our audience. "Oh, Ethan," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "What on earth happened?" He stood up quickly, nearly tripping over his own bags. She went crazy. 1 minute she was fine, and the next she was screaming about fraud and throwing my things outside. His eyes darted toward the window, where Olivia had stopped pacing to glare at us. "We need to go now." I picked up one of his bags, noticing how he flinched as Olivia's front door opened slightly and then slammed shut again. "Let's get your things in the car, of course." We loaded his belongings quickly, the same bags I had helped him pack with such precision now tossed haphazardly into my trunk. Ethan kept looking back at the house as if expecting Olivia to burst out at any moment. His hands trembled as he closed the trunk. "She was fine last night," he said as we drove away, Olivia's townhouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. "We had dinner. We watched a movie. Everything was normal. Then this morning she got the mail and just exploded. She found something in her mailbox, documents about insurance policies and property transfers. She accused me of trying to steal from her, of planning to hurt her for money." His voice cracked on the last words. "Isabella, I would never, you know I would never." "Of course not," I reassured him, signaling to turn onto the main road. "It sounds like the pain medication is making her paranoid. Some people have terrible reactions to those drugs. She's probably not thinking straight." Ethan latched onto this explanation with desperate relief. "That must be it, the meds. She was taking so many pills yesterday." He rubbed his face with both hands. "But she called me a con artist. Said I was after her money. Where would she get an idea like that? Who knows what goes through someone's mind when they're unwell?" I offered, maintaining a steady speed through our neighborhood. "Maybe she'll calm down once the medication wears off. She won't take my calls. I tried to explain, but she just kept screaming about lawyers and fraud reports." He collapsed back into the passenger seat, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "This was supposed to be about helping her recover. How did it turn into this?" I pulled into our driveway, and the familiar sight of our house seemed to startle Ethan, as if he'd forgotten this was technically still his home. We sat in the car for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. Maybe she just needs time, I suggested. Surgery can be traumatic. People aren't themselves afterward. Ethan nodded eagerly, clinging to any rational explanation that didn't involve examining his own actions. You're right, she needs time. Once she thinks clearly, she'll realize this is all a misunderstanding. As we unloaded his suitcases, Mrs. Davis appeared with her elderly Cocker Spaniel, Muffin, perfectly timing her walk to intersect with our arrival. Mrs. Davis had lived on our street for 30 years and possessed an intelligence network that would make the FBI envious. Isabella, Ethan, she called, her voice with that particular lilt of someone feigning surprise while delivering gossip. I heard there was quite a commotion over at the Matthews house this morning. Ethan stiffened beside me, but I touched his arm gently. Mrs. Davis, how are you? And Muffin? Oh, we're fine, dear. Though I must say there was a lot of yelling this morning. Something about a domestic dispute on Rosewood Lane. Her eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. The whole neighborhood heard the shouting, something about fraud and theft. That poor woman was beside herself. The police seemed very interested. Ethan's face flushed deep red. It was a misunderstanding. Of course, Mrs. Davis nodded, though her expression suggested she was already composing the story she'd share at tomorrow's neighborhood coffee. These things happen, though I must say, accusations of fraud are quite serious. We should go inside, I told Mrs. Davis, signaling to Ethan's bags scattered on our driveway. It's been a long morning. She nodded knowingly, tugging Muffin's leash. Of course, dear. Take care. Her parting look at Ethan suggested she had already condemned him in the court of neighborhood opinion. Ethan shuffled in behind me, dragging his suitcase as if it weighed a ton. He headed straight for our bedroom, muscle memory guiding him up the stairs while I stayed in the kitchen, counting the minutes until he discovered the changes I'd made. 3 minutes. That was how long it took before I heard his footsteps return. Heavier now, almost stumbling, he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face pale. My clothes aren't in the closet, they're in the guest room, I said, pulling a folder from my laptop bag. We have to talk. Ethan's eyes locked onto the folder in my hands, the legal-looking manila envelope that contained his future. Isabella, what is this? Sit down, I said, gesturing to the kitchen table where we had shared 5 years of meals, conversations, and lies. He sat slowly, as if his bones had turned to glass. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table with deliberate precision. The divorce papers, crisp and official, the forensic accounting report Carla's team had prepared. 23 pages detailing every financial transgression, bank statements with withdrawals highlighted, the insurance policy documentation, the property transfer deed, a complete catalog of betrayal documented in black and white. Ethan's face transformed as he processed what was before him. First came confusion, his brows furrowing as he tried to make sense of the papers, then shock, his mouth falling slightly open as he recognized the insurance documents. Anger flashed next, his jaw tightening at the sight of the bank statements. Finally, as the full extent of his exposure became evident, his expression collapsed into something pathetic and pleading. Where did you get this? His voice was barely a whisper. From your filing cabinet, the one you thought I didn't have a key to. I sat across from him, maintaining the same calm I had shown since Tuesday night. The divorce papers are new, of course. My attorney drafted them this morning. Your attorney? He looked up sharply. You already saw a lawyer? You moved in with another woman, Ethan. What did you expect me to do, wait patiently for you to return? His hands were shaken as he picked up the forensic accounting report. This says I diverted $30,000. 467 to be precise, over 2 years. Insurance premiums for a policy on Olivia. Property consultation fees that mysteriously coincided with the transfer of her deed. Several other expenses that had nothing to do with our marriage, but everything to do with your plans with her. The house, he said suddenly, looking around our kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. This is our house. No, Ethan, this is my house, purchased before our marriage with my grandmother's inheritance. You never contributed to the mortgage payments. That came out of my personal account, not our joint finances. You're a tenant here now, and you have 30 days to find alternative accommodation. The color completely drained from his face. You can't do this. I can, and I am. The joint accounts have been frozen pending asset division, though given the forensic accounting, my lawyer believes the court will be very interested in your financial misconduct. Marital fraud, she called it. Ethan stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You planned this. You knew about Olivia's surgery, about everything? I knew what you chose to show me, I said calmly. Your laptop was unlocked. Your emails were right there. You left your filing cabinet unlocked. You made it remarkably easy to understand exactly what you and Olivia were planning. The documents, he said, realization dawning with horrible clarity. The ones Olivia found in her mailbox, that was you. I inclined my head slightly. I simply ensured that everyone involved had all the information necessary to make informed decisions. Isn't that what you claim to be doing? Making the mature, informed decision to help someone in need. You've ruined everything, Ethan said, his voice rising. You turned Olivia against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. I only made sure Olivia knew about the life insurance policy you took out on her, the one worth $500,000 with you as the sole beneficiary. Any reasonable person would find that concerning, don't you think? Especially combined with the property transfer. Ethan's phone vibrated on the table. He picked it up, and I watched as his face went even paler as he read. He turned the screen toward Mace. Olivia's Facebook post was already gaining traction. Warning to all women, it began in all caps. Ethan Miller is a con artist who tried to take my house and took out life insurance on me without my knowledge. He used his wife's money to pay for it while planning to leave her. Proof attached. Below were photos of every document from the envelope I had left in her mailbox. The insurance policy, the property deed, even screenshots of their planning emails discussing their plot. The comments were already piling up, our mutual friends expressing shock, anger, disbelief. My reputation, Ethan whispered, scrolling through the growing firestorm of comments. My career. Everyone will see this. Yes, I assented. They will. His phone rang. His brother's name appeared on the screen. Then it rang again. His mother, a colleague. The avalanche had begun. You did this, he said. But there was no fight left in his voice, only hollow acknowledgement. You orchestrated the whole thing. The packing, the ride there, the documents. You knew exactly what would happen. I knew Olivia deserved to know what kind of man was moving into her house. I knew you deserved to face the consequences of your decisions, and I knew I deserved better than a husband who spent 2 years planning his exit while sleeping next to me every night. Ethan slumped back into the chair, his phone continuing to vibrate with incoming calls and messages. The life he had carefully constructed, the reputation he had cultivated, the elaborate plan he'd hatched with Olivia, all of it unraveling in real time, documented for public consumption on social media. The guest room has clean sheets, I said, collecting the legal documents back into their folder. Your belongings are in the closet there. You have 30 days, Ethan. I suggest you start apartment hunting tomorrow. I got up to leave, but his voice stopped me at the doorway. How long have you known? Known what? That you were leaving since Tuesday night? That you were a liar? Perhaps I always knew. I just chose to believe in something better. I never wanted it to happen like this, he said to my back. No, I nodded without turning around. Did you want it to happen without me ever finding out? With you having both Olivia's property and my financial support, with you getting everything, while I was left with nothing but an empty house and confusion? This version, where you're exposed for who you really are. You're right. You never wanted this to happen. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom, now mine and mine alone, and closed the door on Ethan's muffled phone conversation with what seemed to be his brother. The panicked tone of his voice filtered through the floor as I changed into comfortable clothes and tied back my hair. This was my house, my space, my life to reclaim. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal meetings and redirected mail. The neighborhood gossip network, more efficient than any news service, kept me informed without my having to ask. Maria heard from her colleague who lived on Rosewood Lane that Olivia had filed a restraining order against Ethan. The property transfer had been flagged as potentially fraudulent, and she was pursuing legal action. Mrs. Davis, walking muffin past my house daily now, mentioned she'd heard Ethan had moved into a studio apartment near the freeway, the kind of place that advertised affordable weekly rates on faded billboards. My mother arrived one Saturday morning, 3 weeks after Ethan's departure, with a pot of her famous chicken soup and the determined expression of a woman on a mission. She walked in with her spare key, found me reading in the living room, and set the soup on the kitchen counter without a word. "You're too thin," she said, her standard greeting, regardless of my actual appearance. "I'm eating fine, Mom." She heated the soup while I set the table, our movements synchronized by years of practice. We ate in comfortable silence for several minutes before she spoke again. "Isabella, your father wasn't my first husband." I nearly dropped my spoon. In 32 years, she had never mentioned it. "His name was Richard," she continued, stirring her soup with careful precision. "Charming, ambitious, everything a young woman thinks she wants. We were married 3 years before I found out he'd been using my trust fund to finance his mistress's boutique. He'd convinced me to put his name on everything, said it was what married couples did. Mom didn't have a clue. I was 25 and thought I knew everything about love." She looked at me, and I saw fresh experience reflected in her eyes. "The morning I found out, I wanted to burn his clothes in the yard, scream at him in front of his colleagues, make sure everyone knew what kind of man he was." "What did you do?" "I quietly, carefully documented everything. Then I served him with divorce papers at the grand opening of his mistress's boutique, in front of all his investors." A small smile played on her lips. "The boutique closed in 6 months. Richard moved to another state and became a used car salesman. Last I heard, he was on his 3rd marriage. And Dad? I met your father 2 years later. By then, I knew the difference between charm and character." She crossed the table and squeezed my hand. "The best revenge is living well while they live with their choices. Isabella, you're already doing that." The validation I didn't know I needed washed over me. My mother, the woman who taught me how to fold fitted sheets and never to leave the house without lipstick, understood exactly what I had done and why. Later that afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message from Sophia, Olivia's sister from Laura's book club. "Olivia wants you to know something. Can I give her your number?" I considered it for a moment before replying. "She can email me." The email arrived that evening, sent from a new address with no subject line. "Isabella, I won't insult you with apologies or excuses. We both know what I did and what I intended to do, but you saved me from something potentially dangerous. The insurance policy, the property transfer, my lawyer says it could have been catastrophic if I'd let him stay. I've posted everything online, not for the drama, but to warn others. Ethan Miller is a predator with a pleasant mask. Thank you for taking that mask off. I'm moving to Lisbon next month. A new start. Olivia." I read it twice before deleting it. No reply was needed. Olivia and I weren't going to be friends bonded by Ethan's betrayal. We were just 2 women who had learned an expensive lesson about the difference between what men say and what they do. The leaves turned autumnal colors as my life settled into new rhythms. Ethan's 30 days came and went, with him picking up his remaining belongings while I was deliberately at work. He left his key on the kitchen counter with no note, just the metallic acknowledgement that this chapter was closed. 6 months after that Tuesday night revelation, I hosted my first dinner party in the house that was now entirely mine. Maria brought her new boyfriend, a pediatrician who laughed at her jokes and looked at her like she was the 8th wonder. Laura came with her husband and a bottle of wine expensive enough to prove she was celebrating my freedom. Even Mrs. Davis was invited, delighting everyone with neighborhood gossip while pretending not to have been my espionage network during the dark days. The house felt different now, lighter. I had repainted the walls in colors Ethan had called too bold, hung art he deemed too modern, and converted his office into a reading room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Every corner reflected my choices, my taste, my life. "A toast," Maria announced, raising her glass as we gathered in the living room after dinner, "to Isabella, who proved to all of us that sometimes the best answer to betrayal isn't revenge, it's revelation." We clinked glasses, the sound crystal clear in my peaceful home. Through the window, I could see the city lights spread out in the distance, each one representing someone living their own story, facing their own betrayals and triumphs. Somewhere across town, Ethan was learning that a reputation once shattered can't be rebuilt with explanations or excuses. His LinkedIn profile had gone inactive after too many people shared Olivia's warning post. The marketing agency where he had worked had quietly suggested he seek opportunities elsewhere. Olivia had, indeed, moved to Lisbon, leaving behind a townhouse that no longer held profit or promise for Ethan's plans. I stayed in my kitchen after everyone left, washing the wine glasses by hand, finding comfort in the simple ritual. The house was silent but not empty. It was full of the echoes of genuine laughter, real friendship, and the knowledge that I had chosen truth over comfortable lies. The manila envelope that had started Ethan's downfall was long gone, but its impact remained, not in bitterness or anger, but in the clean, crisp clarity of a life reclaimed. I had learned that sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't rage or vengeance, it's simply making sure everyone sees the truth.